February 3rd, 1919, Des Moines, Iowa. What else you want me to say?
How old are you now, Joe?
I'm 81 plus.
Tell me a little bit about growing up.
Growing up, I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, in the on East 6, where there was a sort of a conglomeration of Jews. Neighbors all walk up and down the street. That's all you saw was Jews. It was during a lot of it was during the Depression time, so things were tough. We had food, but my mother was a fantastic cook, so whatever food we got was good. My father was a peddler, which was very common in those days. He would get up early and come back late, like I think most fathers in that era were. They worked their tails off trying to provide a living for us, food for us, a house for us. I remember the one thing about growing up, we lived next to the dump on East 6th and University. There was a dump next door. And the reason that we lived in the house, because it's the cheapest house on the street. But it had enough room for our family. I had a brother and my mother and father, and hey, we didn't know any difference. We thought it was a palace. It had rooms and sometimes heat, and we had food, and we could walk. The University Bridge was just a half a block, so we walked to the Jewish Community Center to do things at the Jewish Community Center. What it was only a 3 or 4 mile walk. That was a short one in those days. And we could walk down to East Des Moines, where there were shows where we tried to snuck in to see the movies. And there was a couple of fruit stands where we'd steal fruit. I mean, that was typical in those days. You tried to do what you could do. We went to Longfellow School, and some of the friends that I had then, I still have. Babe Whitten, we were in kindergarten together, and Jack Goodside they're both a year older than I am, but they flunked one time, so they were in my grade. And Jack is now very desperately ill, and Babe still has his pint of liquor a day that he claims that's his claim to being healthy. In fact, the doctors tell him that. We had a lot of fun at the Jewish Community Center. We belonged, I think, the Young Judea. I don't think there's probably about a dozen Young Judeas, but we had our own. And we played basketball over there. And I got to help, and this is funny that I remember these names because they're history. A guy by the name of Hansen was the director of the gym. And he sort of liked me, so I got to be a locker boy. Baskets, you know, they used to have baskets. You put your stuff in and put it in there. And it was fun. It was fun because we got to know each other. Right now, I can consider my compadres is because we don't have any family anymore. They all have passed away. I have one cousin, but they were our family, and we were a close family. You know, you could walk up the street, and if you were hungry, you could go in and say, "Hey, what are you eating tonight?" and let's eat. You see, I don't think that's a situation that happens. I don't think any kid could walk in another house and say, "I'm hungry." Maybe they could. I don't know, but that's the way we grew up, in a fun situation where we didn't really know that we were deprived. And one of the stories that I always tell is that to get clothes, my mother used to always buy these overhaul pants, not jeans, overhaul pants, and they were so stiff that if you were a small kid, it took you a week or two just to break them so the knees would bend. And they were always about that longer than you needed. They'd roll them up so that you wouldn't outgrow them. You wouldn't be the pants wouldn't be up to your knees. They would just unroll the pants. So, but these and they stood up. They were hard. hard quality things, and the shirts were denim or whatever, the cheapest material, and we always got, and this is a thing that stays in my memory, we always got a sheepskin coat for the winter. Now, I don't know whether they couldn't be very expensive in those days, or we would have gotten one, but we always had a sheepskin coat and some kind of a mittens or whatever to keep warm, and some kind of a stocking cap. So that was part of our clothing for the winter. And of course, the pants went all through the year. Never wore those out. They were just stiff, and they got softer after a couple washings or whatever. So.
Joe, were your parents born in this country?
No. Yes, that's right. My mother was born in Chicago, Illinois, and my father was born in Lithuania, outside of Gretna. And when we went there to Lithuania, we couldn't find it at all. It was, the town was there, but they weren't there. Some of the people that we were with on the trip, they did find graveyards where their parents or family were there. So my mother was born in Chicago, Illinois. My grandfather was brought to Des Moines, Iowa, because he was a baker. And they needed a baker in Des Moines. And a guy by the name of Lappin, his old name comes back easier than the ones that knew. Lappin knew my grandfather was a baker, and they brought him to Des Moines to be the baker, the town baker. So, and they lived in Des Moines in what they called South Bottoms, which is on Scott Street. And there's a lot of Jewish people there. Some of the people there, like the Pigeons, remember the Pigeons department store? And Cones, I don't know if you know the Bedowers or the Cones from Des Moines. He had a clothing store. And my uncle had a grocery store. Didn't they all? Was there many people you didn't know didn't have a grocery store of sorts? My father had a grocery store, but my mother took care of it. Well, he went out and peddled while she took care of the store with the case of for cheese and lunch meat or whatever they had, and some groceries stacked on the shelf that they went to wholesale groceries and wholesale things down on 3rd and Street in Des Moines to buy a few, not cases, pieces, 3 or 4 things. The amount of the capital of that day. And the one thing I think that was more disturbing than anything, they eventually all had to take it out on credit. Everybody was on credit. And if they didn't pay their bill, then they couldn't buy more merchandise. And so that was the accumulation of the family. And of course, they all went broke when the war, when the Depression hit. We lived during the Depression. We didn't worry. Nothing to worry about. So anyway.
Did you mention you had one brother, Joe?
One brother. Well, actually there was 2 brothers and 2 sisters. One brother was killed as an infant. Somebody backed up over his back on him. And the one girl had blue baby, what they call a blue baby. And the other was almost died shortly after she was born. So, but the one brother that was approximately 4 years older than I am, lived until he was about 55 or something like that. He died young. And we still have his son lives in California, but that's our only really relatives. And then we got to the war. Oh, during high school, one of the things that I wanted to do was go on to school. But hell, we didn't have 2 pennies to count to go to school. So I had a cousin that lived in Little Rock, Arkansas, that was a football player. And he says, Joe, you're big enough, go out for football, you go to school. So I started playing football, and sandlot football in grade school. And in high school, I did very well. In fact, I'm in the B'nai B'rith Hall of Fame in Iowa. So I got to go to Iowa on a scholarship. One of the first in my family that ever went to college. Although I played football for fun, it served the purpose of getting me to college. And of course, the next step out of college was the Army.
Tell me a little bit about your high school days.
Oh, high school days was like, I didn't have much social life because nobody had any money. I worked after school in grocery stores for relatives or people, grocery stores. Because we had no clothes we wanted to go out with, and because we had no money to go with, our social life was pretty much a party here and there. Some rich kid would have a party, and that was pretty much our social life. The funny part about it, that I thought I was the only one, but when we had our 50th reunion, we found out most of the kids were in the same boat. There was no. We always thought everybody else had such social life. And all it was just a few kids, there were one or two kids, non-Jewish, that had a car or whatever, which was fantastic in 1937 to have a car, 1936. But, so we all were pretty much, when the girls were, say, one of the girls that I was, a non-Jewish girl that I was particularly fond of, when we start talking about our 50th anniversary, and she says to me, why did you ever ask me out for a date? We were so good friends. And I said, I never had another nickel to take you. Where would I take you? I couldn't even buy you a nickel hamburger. And she says, I knew that, and I was worried that you would ask me because I didn't have anything to wear. So, which was sort of a set of what was happening in that whole era. We wanted to, we thought we wanted to, but we didn't really. I think that the first girl that I really dated was Beth. And that's after I come back from the Army. Because, and then I had some money, see? Had all that money I accumulated from the Army. So then I could ask Beth out to a date. And eventually, of course, we got married. But even in college, I worked. Scholarships weren't more like they are today. We got room and board, which meant we stayed in the dorm. Some of them stayed in this gym upstairs of the field house. They had bunks. They stayed. But I stayed in the dorm for, I think, about $6 a month. I was able to get that. And, you know, tuition, if you even had to pay it, I think it was $60 a year. It's very, very nominal. So, you know, even if you got a tuition, and then we ate at the hospital. If we got through with practice early enough, we'd run like hell to get to the hospital cafeteria, and then we ate what was left over, which was all right. We survived, but that's how we ate, and that's what they provided for us. Now you see, they have in football, they have elaborate training tables and whatever. None of those things, and that was just the beginning of the new era of football in college. Before I graduated from college, World War II, and I was the first man that volunteered to go to the draft. A friend of ours, by name of Judge Grunt. How do I remember these names? My God, these are ancient history names. But Judge Grunt was an avid football fan, and he was come out to every game. And so when they first announced in 1940, they were the draft. I think it was about August or September. He called me one night and he says, "Joe, we got a situation here, and I want you to think about it a couple minutes and then let me know your answer. He says, we're going to draft a first man, and we want you to volunteer. I said, hey, wait a minute, I don't want to be no Army man. And he says, look, you get your year out of the way. When you get out of college, you can go to a job and say, look, my year's out of the way, and it'll be a good thing. And the reason we want you to do it, because you play football, and you got a good reputation, and we want everybody to know that a Jew and a football player is the first man to volunteer for the draft. So that's why I was the first man drafted. I was supposed to end in 1 year, but it took me 5 years to get out of that 1 year thing.
Joe, did you finish college?
At Drake.
You did at Drake. How long did you go to University of Iowa?
3 years.
Did you finish at Drake before you went into the service?
No. I come back on the GI Bill.
Tell me a little bit about your service days.
Oh, that was wonderful. When we first went in the Army, we went to Fort Snelling. First of all, we went down to the train depot to transport us to Minneapolis. And I remember my dad and everybody coming, crying, going to go in the Army, going to get killed. We went up to Fort Snelling, and they didn't know what to do with us. They literally didn't even expect us. They finally got some 1918 uniforms left over that was smelled from cosmoline or whatever it is they preserve things in. High neck, wrap around boots things, pants, the knicker type thing. So that's what they outfitted us. And we were put with a regular Army unit. And they had a funny way of eating. They were allowed so much money to eat, the company. And they learned how to do cheap things, like a lot of spaghetti and a lot of SOS type things, hamburger type things. And we couldn't understand that kind of food. We never have eaten that kind of food. I used to. I liked the SOS. That's why I used to it. We were there about in Fort Leonard Wood over Christmas. And then they decided that Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri was opening up. And they needed a cadre in Fort Leonard Wood, so that we were sent, the guys that I was sent with, some kids from Des Moines, some from all over the Midwest. And we were sent to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And they put us in the station hospital there. Now, this was a 2,000 bed station hospital. And because I was the first one there, I got to be sergeant, acting sergeant in supplies. I was the first one, my buddy, who was a sergeant major, we were the first ones. You couldn't get over a certain rank as a draftee. You couldn't be over a PFC. You could be PFC, first grade, second grade, third grade, fifth, whatever, and that was equivalent to being a corporal in wage. And then we were the first one. Then they said, well, you can be corporals. So we were the first corporals. And then they said, well, you can be a buck sergeant. So we were the first buck sergeant. And then we could be a staff sergeant. Then we were the first master sergeants in the draftee. So we really had it what we call easy in the Army. The first, we were there for 3 years at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, developing this hospital, and I think there was 4 divisions down there before we left. One day, my friend was a sergeant major, and we lived together in our own in our barracks. We had a little room that we shared. And one day he said, "Joe, I've got a problem. Your officer, Captain Camel, is stealing all the things that you're getting together." In those days, you see, what we had was an inventory and inspection. And I'd take my towels towels down to the and sheets and whatever, and get them inspected, and take them back, and keep doing that. See, so I accumulated sheets and towels and things that always disappeared on you. And the same happened with medical supplies. See, the instruments, I would take them and I&I them and then bring them back. So I always had more supplies than anybody. Also, at the gate, anybody that would come through the gate with whiskey, it was confiscated and was sent to me for medicinal purposes. So I had a locker full of booze. And one day I kept noticing that my booze supply is going down. And technically, see, I had signed for it. And I couldn't understand, well, who in the hell was stealing the booze, because so then my friend, Sergeant Becker, said, he's stealing your liquor and selling it in Fort Leonard Wood in St. Louis. And you better get out of there, because they're going to accuse you. So we made up, and I didn't have any intention to go to OCS, but I went to OCS to get out of that mess that was coming. And they did catch him eventually, and I don't know how many years he spent in Leavenworth. And not only did he steal the liquor, he stole medical supplies and different drugs, because certain drugs were not inventoried. He just kept buying them, and I would, of course, reorder on supply. And man, if we were short on it, I'd order it. And he was selling that stuff like crazy, making a fortune, I guess, out of it. So that's why I went to OCS.
Where did you go to OCS?
I went to Camp Arkley, Texas, Medical Administrative Corps. We went there originally to and we were going to be medical administrative thing, MADC, medical administrative whatever, and we were to administer like MASH units or hospital units. We were sent down to Camp Arkley, Texas, Camp Shelby, Mississippi. I was sent to a hospital down there. I was there about 1 month, and we got an orders to go back to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, or Fort Barkley, Texas. They changed the thing, MIT, what do they call it, the table of operation, and they had medical doctors in infantry. And the medical detachment was made up of 2 medical doctors and enlisted men. Well, they had the front medical doctor was getting killed and injured so often that they decided they'd put the MACs down there and to do the front line medical thing, because all you did was either give them morphine or battle asthma and get them out of there anyway. You couldn't really treat them anyway. So that's where I ended up on the medical, on the front lines. And I was in the Battle of the Bulge and all through that whole system.
How long did you go to Officers Candidate School?
4 months.
4 months.
That was, I think the time I went down, they raised it from 3 months to 4 months. But because we were a technical thing, they thought they needed an extra month. But most of it was like 90-day wonders. That was the thing. But they made us 120 days. We were fortunate, lucky, and all the other words you want to use to get out of the Battle of the Bulge, because there was a high percentage of people killed and a lot of shell shock or whatever, because it was a horrible, horrible situation. And then to go with the Army, we took the Siegfried Line, which is a line there. I don't know whether anybody remember that, but that was a line like the Maginot Line was French and the Siegfried Line. And we finally broke that, got down to the Rhine, and crossed the river at Remagen. We were in that group. And then the first thing after we crossed the Rhine, we hit a little town. I had to get the books out to tell you the name of it. And I got a call from the advanced troops. Doc, get your butt up here, we got problems. So that was not unusual. We always had problems with the advanced troop. I went up there and they showed me a building that appeared to be an old gymnasium or school. And they, all the doors and windows were boarded up. And they had wood and whatever around the building. And the Germans were about to burn that building. And what was in there was German or Jewish people who were work camps. And this building was full of people who were emaciated, who were hardly living. Maggots and everything that you can think horrible was in that building. All the thing we could do was, of course, take off the things off the windows and the doors, and called the mass unit division corps to get, because we couldn't handle them. They were beyond corps men able to handle them. We first thought, well, we'll get some food together and get them, and then better thoughts come to our mind. We'd kill them with that K ration. We couldn't eat the darn stuff. How are we going to feed these guys? And incidentally, you know, some units who rescued these units did feed them K rations, and it did have an adverse effect on it, worse than they were, because K rations you can't digest it when you're a human. But when you're in that kind of a boat, and they didn't have any food nor water, they were the horror of my life. I still can't get that picture out of my mind of seeing these people. I guess that being 20 or 21 years old, you can't understand the inhumanity to humans, but there it was. And we kept hitting these camps as we were progressing. We never actually hit a camp per se like the others were noted for until we hit Leipzig. And as we was going through Leipzig, it was easy. We were going as fast as little legs could carry us. And all of a sudden we had a whole German army against us. And we couldn't understand why all of a sudden all the Germans in Germany were fighting us. We're just a division and taking Leipzig, which was an important city, but we found out after we broke through they had a incinerator. And they were trying to burn them and incinerate them before we got there, because they didn't want the world to know what they were doing. And when we got there, and I have books that verify this, they had already burnt a building with 200 in, and they were about to do another 200. The furnaces were going like crazy. They had as many as they could stuff in there. And the thing that I guess we did realize as we were approaching, we felt that odor. You can say felt because it was strong in your nostrils. We thought there was something burning beyond regular stuff, and then we realized there was humans that they were burning up. And then we found some German women who spoke English, and they told us the story of what was happening there. And that's in the diary that the regiment, or I don't know whether the regiment or the division, they have these two incidents that I'm talking about in there, because I kept telling them, let's put this in, because nobody will believe us that this happened. And really, I think that they had a hard time making people believe that this was happening. If we hadn't had pictures and the number of people involved, I don't think anybody would believe that they could be a room full of emaciated human beings eaten up by maggots and whatever. If anybody told you that, would you believe it? So there we were. So we got that. And then, of course, as we move towards Russia, the roads were just packed with people coming out of the camps. And, of course, we couldn't understand that except where in the hell are they coming from? Coming from Russia towards us. We knew they weren't Russians. All the Russians didn't look too much different than they did because they didn't have any uniforms. But there they were. They were just coming and begging for what we had, and we didn't have anything. But I'll say one thing for American soldiers, they shared what they had. They were strong enough to eat the K rations. And whatever we had, and C rations. We had a lot of C rations too. And we had a lot of what we called 10-in-1s, which were big packets, so you could fix up a meal for 10 people. We used those in when we were transported in the railroad cars, so that we could eat with that. But one of the things, I guess, it was when we finally met the Russians, we met them at the River Torga, and we had a lot of fun with them. They had meals with us, and they had you ever drink day old vodka? They made them out of whatever they could find. They had vodka. It was horrible. Get up the next day, you had putrid potatoes in your stomach. But they were having fun. They thought K rations and C rations was the ultimate. People eat that much. They had their girls, friends, and whatever. And they were, it was a nice meeting for and what we had anticipated and what we got, what we talked to them was different things, because we were told that we were going to have not only the fight of the Germans, that we would have to fight the Russians. And we were not about to want to do that. We were tired. So, but that was mainly the Army. After that, of course, they moved us back to camps, and then I was one of the criteria of shipping back to the United States was the number of points you had. And the points were accumulated in number of years, months and weeks you served, amount of battle decorations you got, all that was based on time and things. So I had about more than enough. So I was one of the first ones that were able, and we come back on the Queen Elizabeth, which was pretty hot stuff.
And the war ended at that time, Joe?
War ended before that. The war ended when we met the Russians, and that was about the 8th of August, around in there someplace, I think the date. And once we met the Russians, it was pretty over. In a sense, the chaplain, Baptist chaplain, and I got in a Jeep. We were going to go see the rest of the land because we were just sent back. The Russians had wouldn't do that. They wouldn't let us get out of our own American sector. You know, there was American sectors, and we wanted to go to Berlin. We thought that would be a trip. No way. If you went to Berlin, you could only stay in the American sector. So that was the end of the war, technically, but the Russians still was pretty much. You got to know that they had it pretty rough. The Russians had it rough.
Joe, where did you go to school when you stayed over?
What?
Where did you go to school when you stayed over there?
Oh. Well, when we were waiting to go back, they had Heidelberg had schools. And one of the schools they had was a football coaching school. So I got to go back and teach football at Heidelberg University, and the only difference was because of the bridges were gone. Other than that, it was intact. So we got to live in Hamburg, or no, it was Frankfurt. Frankfurt was not too far from, God, we lived high on a hog. You know, we took all this food away from people. That was, yeah, we did. I wasn't going to say that, but we would capture a small town, not for the town, but for the food we could get out of it. And I don't know how many walls we'd break down because they would hide their food behind walls. And so we took their food, actually got into a bed that was warmed by a German Frau, you know, just to find what a bed felt like. We were typical warriors of the old time, taking what you can from what you can get, including the rapes and all the other things that went on. I didn't do that, but anyway, it was horror in that effect. As we look back on it, what happened, why we were so. I don't know whether we mean. We were just upset. We had gone through a lot, and we were going to take it out on everybody what was German.
How were the Germans toward you, toward the military?
There wasn't any Nazis. There were not any Nazis in Germany. They were very emphatic in the fact that, you know, they were not Nazis. Everybody else was Nazis, but they weren't Nazis. And I don't know whether they were or not. You know, I think that whatever they were forced to do. Maybe that's a good thing, but at least they took advantage of it, the good things of it. And but no, they were. They thought that we were nice people. For the most part, we weren't harmful, except taking away their food. But we did, the Army, not us personally, the Army did provide food for them, as they didn't have any food. I think the United States as a country was nice to them. Not that they deserved it. Who knows? I mean, can you imagine being 21, 22 years old and being shot at and hit? I was wounded, incidentally. Did I tell you that? Being wounded, going through the Battle of the Bulge, wondering if you're going to live, and then you see these people going through the Siegfried line where they were giving all the machine guns fire at you and whatever, and there was 88s and whatever they had, and you couldn't have any great feeling for these people because there it was in your mind. Although, you know, I don't think I talked about the Battle of the Bulge for 10 years after. I don't think after we were married I ever talked about the Battle of the Bulge. It was too horrible to talk about. So you had to remember that they were there, and they were what they did and what they were part of. So sort of rambling here, but the Army was a unique thing, and I'm glad I'm out of it alive. But some of the cities that we ravished, I don't know how many. I didn't take. I was foolish. I only took a couple cameras, and they weren't the latest kind. But there was a lot of pictures, furs, a lot of people got and shipped back to the United States in the name of victory, in the name of the victors. So
when did you come home then, Joe?
I came home about Thanksgiving, I think, of 1944 or 45, 44. When was the war over?
At that point?
We were sent to a camp in outside of Chicago. I forget the name of it. And we were discharged there. And we had to wade through a week or two of heavy solicitation, if you want to call it that, because they wanted us to want us to stay. And then we were sent home with our whatever we owned, and that was it. Had a big celebration when we got home. We got home. I organized a club that's still in the minds of a lot of kids, because so many got married. We had a prospectors club because we didn't know anybody when we got home. The girls that we left 5 years ago were no longer young girls. Most of them were married or whatever, either by mail order or whatever. But we had to recruit them out of grade school. And literally and figuratively, that's where they were. They were much younger than we were. Not everybody. Yeah, just about everybody was that were married, but there must have been 50 marriages out of that prospectors club. And then we went to all we call AKs, all married, Alta-cockers and all married. So we had quite a social group out of that. The group that we come back with.
Going back a step, were you wounded in the Battle of the Bulge, or
yes.
was it afterward?
No, I was wounded in the Battle of the Bulge.
Okay, and what army or division were you with?
69th Infantry Division.
Okay, and that was commanded by?
Gee, I should know, but I don't.
You don't remember.
See, that's not one of the ones I remembered.
Okay.
But that was Patton.
Oh, it was Patton's?
Yeah, Patton's army.
Okay.
But he was not our division commander.
But he was the army commander.
Right. So we got knocked around
For years you were remembered by the man that you pulled out of the basement, who was the chaplain.
Oh, well.
He kept in touch with you for years.
When we crossed the Rhine, not the Rhine, the Wire River, I don't know, it was Mull River, we set up a aid station in a tool chest. I don't know if you're familiar with, but in most Germany, the sun side of the hill off of a creek there were vineyards, and they were so we got crossed over there, and we thought we were safe in there, but they put 88s on us, and that's where I got wounded. It was mostly concussion, because an 88 was within a certain distance, the concussion and shrapnel, but the concussion. And pretty soon I heard, Joe, and it was the chaplain. One of the terraces had fallen on him, he and some of the others. So I went in there and dragged him out like a fool and got him out of the thing, because next time, the reason I say fool, because I risked my own life, and I shouldn't have done that. My life was more valuable than that, but you don't think of that. You see, when you think of somebody getting a medal, you got to know that most times that was not a conscious effort. That was a trained effort, an effort that drilled into you. You do what you have to do, and you follow your orders, and you do what a good soldier should do. Because you wouldn't, in your right mind, go into 88 fire range and pull somebody out, because you know damn well you'd never get out of there. You'd get hit too. But unfortunately I got out. It's just a little wound.
Did you get a medal?
Yes, I got a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart and several other little things that are around the house. So
Well, when you came back to Des Moines, tell me what you did then.
when I first come back to Des Moines, I went to school. And then like now, strangely, I should make that analogy, but they were begging for people to work. You know, all the guys were coming. And a family by the name of Ingman, which you may or may not know, they had a parts place. And they were able to get parts when nobody else got parts. And he asked me to come to work for him. So I worked for them while I went to school. I did that for, I don't know, months. And then my uncle, who we were very close to, Matloff, said, I've got a building. let's make a grocery store. So I went and business partner with my uncle in a grocery store. And I think that's about where I met Beth.
I was waiting for Beth to get into this story.
I think that, was we a partner with Dave when we got married?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, was it before that? Well, we were going before that because he used to go to the meetings together.
Well, you went to Rabbi Weingart and wanted to know that none of you guys knew any of the girls. I mean, they became aware of social life, you know, and I mean, they had normal thoughts about dating and a social life, right? And you went to Rabbi Weingart and said you had an idea that maybe in some way you could bring these people together that had all come home from the army, and the girls who also wanted to meet the guys. And you
Probably
named
more
the
so.
club.
Probably more so.
You named the club, and he thought it was a good idea, and it was a wonderful. I came home. I was dancing in Chicago at that time, and I came home, and our families knew one another, but because of a difference in our ages, he and I never knew one another. But our mothers knew one another, and his father knew my grandparents. So we just became friendly, and I didn't have a car. My dad was ill. He subsequently died a few months later. And my brother was buried overseas at first. We tried to find the grave when we went to Germany. I said I'd never go to Germany, but we did. And when he mentioned Remagen to you, we had rented a car, and he wanted to see where it was he had been, the bridge that they had blown up so that they couldn't go any further in their advances, the Germans. And we drove to it, and it's like it was yesterday, and gosh, it's 10, 15 years ago. He said, see that hole in that cliff? That's where they were when they shot down on us. And you can see the ends of where the bridge started on each side of the river. They still had the pillars that you could see close to the ground. And he said, that's the bridge that prevented them from going any further. Stopped their advance. They couldn't get across the river. He mentioned the river to you. Yeah.
Well, eventually we crossed on Pontoon Bridge. That's how we crossed.
The legendary bridge at Remagen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the first of our group did cross the bridge.
Tell me a little bit about your brother, Beth.
My brother's name was Bernard Alvin Bernstein. He was a navigator on a B-17. He volunteered to go on missions. He was stationed in northern England. On his sixth mission, it was over the ball bearing plants in Schweinfurt and Frankfurt. He was buried there at first. 5 years later, after the war was over, my father had died in the meantime. My mother wanted him buried in this country. I'm trying to think. It was outside Frankfurt, wasn't it, Joe, when you went? It was outside Frankfurt. Supposedly, I had traced where it was, the American cemetery. No matter who we asked, there was no American cemetery, and they didn't know what we were talking about. We drove around and around on a very rainy day. There were people having a picnic. We had a hard time finding the cemetery. We located a cemetery, but they said it had never been an American cemetery. Before, when we were speaking with them, they spoke English with us. When we started talking about that and I wanted to locate it, it became they didn't understand me and they spoke only German. We turned around and went back to Frankfurt where we were staying. It was probably a half-hour drive from there. He was shot down. In the newspaper at that time, my father was in the hospital in Rochester at that time. He had cancer. I was staying with neighbors. I had an older brother at home too. There were we three children. He was born handicapped. He was hydrocephalic. I stayed with the neighbors, and they were very good to my brother and myself while they were gone. I picked up the paper one day, and it said 60 bombers lost in daring raids over Frankfurt. And it said ball-bearing plants, whatever that happened to be, that they used in their machinery or whatever it was. Later on in the history, and it's in books, he has a couple of them downstairs, there were not 160, that was propaganda, there were 120 airplanes and crews lost. 3 of the fellows survived from his crew. They were captured as prisoners. When one was able, and through the International Red Cross, they corresponded with Mother and told her that he was taken to a hospital in the morning, and when one of them was released from the camp where they picked him up, I don't know how he even got out. I think it was just a story. Remember they used to have Life magazine? They would have these war stories that read to me like that in the letter. That they went and they said that when they saw his dog tags, and they had Hebrew on it, that they would not, he was injured in the parachute jump, internally injured. I don't know if he was shot in the air or injured on the ground, but that he had hemorrhaged and he was on a cot in the hallway and they refused to help him, and that he died there. We don't know what hospital or anything more than that, and I'm sure the Red Cross probably didn't either. That was October 14th of 1943, in the very heat of the time of the war, and that's what it was. One of them he came home, the pilot, his name was Jackson, he lived in Chicago. He couldn't tell us anything because as soon as they landed, they were either taken prisoner or taken away someplace, and they were separated, and they didn't land together. There was space between them, and the others went down. And that's the story. Also lost my first cousin in Italy. My brother had a friend all his life. They were such close friends. Not Jewish. They were so close. His name was Bud Walker. I thought Bud will come home and he'll find out for us. He died in Okinawa 5 weeks to the day later. So there never was any way for us to find out what happened after he landed on the ground. We never knew. It's like people who were put in camps. They never knew what happened to their family. That's the story.
Well, after I got the Rabbi Weingart to permit us to do this, we got the word out. The word went out fast. And we had sort of a work thing. It wasn't too much social, but we had different kinds of speakers and whatever. We had a fun thing, parties and whatever. And the girls would come, and the boys would come, and the boys would take home the girls and whatever. And eventually, I got up a nerve and asked Beth to take her home, and eventually I even got up enough nerve to ask her to bring her, because that wasn't the
To pick me up because I didn't have a car.
Beth, was it love at first sight?
No, it was friendship. It was a very deep and lasting friendship. He was the same age as my brother. He had remembered my brother from AZA days. And it was just a friendship. And then I started helping him with the committee work, and he would come and pick me up, and he would give me a ride home. There was always transportation, even if he didn't have to worry about that. But then he started calling me, and I would see him during the week, but I never saw him over the weekend. Meanwhile, while I was home, and I knew I was going back to dance again, I was just home for a period of time. This very nice man was stationed, he was a doctor, stationed at the Veterans Hospital there. And I thought, how strange. I see him on the weekends, but I see Joe Monday through Thursday. That went on for quite some time, and at the meetings. Finally, I said to him, and I knew, I said, where do you go on weekends? Why? You never call me on the weekend. Call me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You'd come over, we'd go to Reed's Ice Cream and have ice cream, and we'd talk, or we'd take a ride. And I said, what do you do on the weekends? Do you work somewhere nice or something? So finally I said, I went back to Chicago, and I missed him. I missed our conversations, I missed his company, and he missed me. And I think we just both realized, sitting in front of the car, Joe, in front of Mother's, sitting in the car, that there was more to us than a platonic relationship. And that was how it happened.
Joe, how come you didn't see Beth on the weekend?
Well, because I had some friends, and we went out and did what normal Jewish boys do. Went out and went to bars and drank and does the things that you didn't do with the nice Jewish girl.
And then after Beth left, then you started realizing that there was more to it.
Yes.
Tell me
sure.
about that.
Well, I never thought I'd start writing letters, but I started writing letters. It was an empty world without Beth. And so that's why when she come back, why we start talking about marriage. And it was another thing. Some of our other friends were now getting married. It was the thing to do, because that was about a year.
Mm-hmm.
About a year. And everybody was getting now acquainted enough to get married, and there was a lot of weddings going on. So that was.
You were all ushers and bridesmaids, mostly really. He was an usher at his closest friends, and they were for us. And he spoke of friendship that he'd had from his days when we lived there, and they have become lifelong friends. Mm-hmm.
Well, then, did you stay in the grocery store?
I stayed there for I don't know how long we were with Dave.
Well, you got more ambitious than that.
Yeah.
You wanted to do more on your own.
So I went into another wholesale produce business, because that's what I was doing.
How long were you with that, Joe?
Gosh, I don't know. I went from that to Iowa City, right?
No, honey. You wanted something more creative, so you had the golden loaf you thought of, the
Horse meat, that's right.
and dog food.
Right.
It was a dog food product. And he had the trucks, and it was quite an operation. It was in all the stores, and then it didn't do so well at the end.
Well, when they got more stuff on the market, we were able to buy horses and slaughter them and use the meat. And then they got to be all this byproducts out of the packing houses, which you probably know about, that they were thrown away, and all of a sudden they ended up in dog food. And so to have a specialty dog loaf that was much more expensive than the stuff from byproducts, why, that's what there. And then I think I sort of went into the supermarket business, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
From different, I started with Thriftway as a store produce man, and then I got to be a buyer, and then a guy, what the heck was the guy from Iowa City's name? I forget. Come down and wanted to know if I would be his buyer, and
In Davenport.
no, in Iowa City first, remember? And then Davenport, they had United supermarkets, and see, of course, that the background of the food industry was that a family would get together, and all his Mishpuchin would run a chain, and then they found that the Mishpuchin is not getting along so good, so they'd sell out. And then that would spread out, and that's how they got bigger chains. And and every time that they would get a buyout, well, then they had to bring in somebody else to do some of the work, because the family was getting thinner. Because the other family went into their own business, not all successfully, but they went in their own business. So that's what happened there. They Gaifmans and Waxenbergs were one unit. And they split, so they needed a produce man. But no, that's not the way that happened, is it? They did split, but the son-in-law went on a B'nai B'rith picnic, and they had a boat accident, and the son-in-law was drowned. So then they come to Iowa City and recruited me. And then they merged, and they sent me to Hinky Dinky here. But that's the way, that's the way the thing was in those days. You didn't, you went from chain to chain, which is getting bigger by families. And now look I think that Omaha's a good example. You still got the Bag and Save, which is a family. You still got what's his name on TV all the time?
Harold.
Harold. And then you had the Bakers. Who else was that Baker? There was another family in there, wasn't there?
The Newmans.
Well, the
Who?
Newman
The
family.
Newmans.
Well, Baker's is Newman's. No, you're right. Baker, Hinky Dinky, yeah.
How long were you with Hinky Dinky?
5 years. 5 years.
And that's how you came to Omaha?
They when they merged in Tri-Cities, they sent me around to different places and got me a job. There was no animosity. They just wanted to be sure, and they were nice people. That's how I got here. But and then I went from Hinky Dinky to Baker's, and then I went to do brokering and manufacturing. But it was funny the way things evolved in those days. Now it's a whole different story. They send out people who go out and find people, fill their stores.
Now, Joe, since you've been retired, tell me a little bit about your mentoring.
Well, it didn't start out as mentoring. Before I was even retired, I did the youth programs for Bethel Synagogue. I was the advisor and youth commission chairman. I think I probably got all the honors that Bethel gives. I don't read Torah, but I got all the rest of the honors. And so I did the kids for 8, 10 years. I don't remember how long. And we had some big groups. You know, we had more groups bigger than we have now. And it was fun. And I still get kids that call me from that groups. Then I went to family service as an adjunct to trying to spread out, and I got involved with Mad Dads, and then I got involved with kids, all our kids. Then I got involved with Tom Osborne's group, and then I got involved with doing mentoring for the synagogues. I just sort of spread out until last year. Before I got sick, I was doing 13 kids. And while I was doing that, I was also doing working with the alternate schools, with the Blackburn High School and Wilson Alternate School, and the one in Council Bluff, the Zach School. And I was doing all that, helping the alternate schools. You know what I'm talking about with alternate schools? And it got to be very interesting. We started programs and helped the kids that were having difficulty finding. At first, we started out doing that as a try to teach them. We try to start to tell them that there was more to life than doctors and lawyers. That they now could, by being carpenters and plumbers and whatever, they could make a good living. And that's what we did with the alternate schools.
Joe, you forgot the diversion program. That's occupied a tremendous amount of time.
Diversion
for
program.
a long time.
Well, that was...
Not court diversion through Boy Scouts.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I forgot about that. There's so many things I never will remember. But anyway, when I was involved with the I started doing diversion, court diversion, juvenile court diversion. And I did about 25 units of those. And then I got it spread out too far. I was running too many days, too many hours. I was in this organization, that organization. And having fun doing it, but I didn't realize that I was getting older all the time. And that I couldn't do all these things. And diversion was a real big part of my doing that, because I did probably 500 kids in the diversion program. And that was part of the thing. The diversion program was part of the thing they had the others on August 3rd. That was part of the diversion program, was part of that celebration. Because I didn't too many kids. And Mad Dads was a terrific thing. And they just got $100,000. They're a terrific group. Eddie and the bishop and all those people were. more than any one guy should have had the pleasure of enduring, but I got involved in all of it and enjoyed it all, and hopefully I guess I did contribute, and so it was worthwhile, and it makes me very unhappy that I'm not able to do as much as I should do because of my legs, but I'll get back. I'm getting back with it.